What if Anakin Skywalker had heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Let's get right into it. Our story begins with Anakin Skywalker at the age of 9 years old. For the first time in his life, he was off Tatooine, and he was taking everything in on Coruscant. He recently met with the Jedi Council, and the first impression was less than ideal. The council members seemed to have a disdain for him, especially Master Mace Windu, and Anakin couldn't get his cold stare out of his mind. And he was now alone in a Jedi Temple room, with nothing but his own thoughts, as he waited for Master Qui-Gon to tell him what comes next with the Jedi. And as he sat on the small, fairly uncomfortable bed, something began to happen. It was like he connected with someone. What Anakin did not know was that deep in the Coruscant city, Darth Plagueis was feeling into the Force, feeling for the boy the Jedi called the Chosen One, and Plagueis found him. Plagueis could feel Anakin in the Force, and indeed the boy was powerful. And as Plagueis meditated, he was suddenly overcome by Force lightning. His apprentice, Darth Sidious, was betraying him. Sidious poured on the lightning, catching Plagueis completely off guard, and Plagueis was ready to lead the galaxy with the newly elected Chancellor Palpatine, but instead, Palpatine, aka Sidious, was now getting rid of him. And in the temple, Anakin could somehow feel this. Plagueis had connected with him, and Anakin heard something through the Force. A sinister voice yelled, "You are weak, Plagueis. Now you will die by my hand." And laughter echoed in Anakin's head as he suddenly woke up from whatever this was. Anakin sat alone in this room, now considering everything that was going on. He just had a terrible dream, unlike anything before. Anakin decided he would probably tell Qui-Gon about this, but he didn't want to tell the Jedi Council. They already thought he was dangerous, and so Anakin didn't want to alienate himself even more by talking about whatever this was. It could not even be real. Anakin didn't understand, but he would tell Qui-Gon. But of course, Anakin could never get the chance to truly tell Qui-Gon about his dream, or about the name that he heard, Plagueis. Before Anakin had the courage to tell him, Qui-Gon died on Naboo, and Anakin decided to keep this dream to himself, convincing himself that it was simply a dream, though never a very real one. And over time, Anakin would basically forget about this, and make himself think that his younger self just made it up for the most part. So years would go by, and Anakin would almost never think of this, until one day, near the end of the Clone Wars, Anakin took a seat next to Chancellor Palpatine at the opera on Coruscant. Anakin was beyond stressed out over the past few days. Dooku was dead, and the Clone Wars were set to end soon. This should be a happy time, but the woman he fights for, the woman he lives for, was going to die. He was having nightmares about Padme dying. He needed help. He needed an answer. The Jedi Council couldn't help him. Yoda couldn't help him. Anakin needed anything. And after some discussions about the Jedi at large, Palpatine asked Anakin a simple question. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Anakin was frozen in his seat. Never in his entire life had he heard the name Plagueis, except for in a dream as a child. Anakin chalked it up to nothing more than a dream, but here, today, Palpatine said his name. Plagueis. Anakin could feel his own skin crawl, but he kept his calm, telling Palpatine that he had not heard of him. And Palpatine went on to give the story of Plagueis, ending it with the fact that his apprentice killed him in his sleep. And Anakin remembered more of the dream, or vision now in this moment. He remembered a voice telling Plagueis that he was weak, then killing him. It was all real, and Anakin knew the truth. Palpatine was the apprentice. He had to be. There was no other explanation. No one ever had known about Plagueis. But Anakin was in the middle of an opera. He couldn't confront Palpatine here. Part of him wondered if Palpatine could save Padme, but the emotions of betrayal overwhelmed the emotions of worry in this moment. Anakin calmed himself and peacefully continued the conversation, then began to excuse himself. As he left and got into his speeder, he put his hands into his head, confused and betrayed. Somehow, Plagueis had connected with him right before he died, and now Anakin had the truth about the Sith Lord. And soon after Anakin left, Palpatine himself felt a bit of concern for himself. Anakin was not nearly as receptive to the tale of Plagueis as he'd hoped. It was like he already knew about it. But that was impossible. It had to be. Unless, somehow, Plagueis warned Anakin? No, that made no sense. It was impossible. Palpatine figured he was being needlessly paranoid as the final steps of his plan came into place, and decided he would continue on schedule with some extra precautions. That night, Anakin would not even get a minute of sleep. He laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, full of anxiety, anger, frustration, confusion, every emotion. He didn't tell Padme of his suspicions. He couldn't yet. The Jedi Council had to know of this. Sure, they weren't great at dealing with his problems when it came to Padme, but they must be the first to know of the Sith Lord. He has accidentally revealed himself, and as morning finally came around, Anakin went to the council. He would have called for an emergency meeting earlier, but he didn't want to alert Palpatine to his suspicions. And so when the time finally came, Anakin did go to the council with the location of General Grievous, but also with a secret bombshell to report. As the meeting got underway, the council noticed Anakin was on edge, more than usual. After delivering the report of Grievous's location, he barely even pushed for himself to go. He just stared blankly ahead. Eventually, Windu drew attention to Anakin, asking himself if he had something to say. Anakin snapped out of it now and said yes, he does, standing up in the middle of the council to face everyone. And after years of searching for the truth, searching for the Sith Lord, Anakin told the council he thinks that he knows who the Sith Lord is. And he said, "It's Chancellor Palpatine." Murmurs, surprised gasps spread throughout the council chambers. Many of the members had suspected that Palpatine was secretly working with the Sith. But to be the Sith Lord? And Anakin said he had proof, telling the council about his experience when he was just a child in the temple. Anakin said he had a vision so long ago, before he understood what the Force was at all. It was like someone connected with him, and all he heard was evil laughter, and someone talking to a man named Plagueis, telling them that he'd grown weak. Anakin continued on, saying that for years, it seemed like nothing, that he even let it go, got it out of his mind, but it all came back last night, as Palpatine told him a story about Plagueis, a story that directly mirrored Anakin's visions. After a moment, Ki-Adi-Mundi asked Anakin why he never told the council about this vision when he was younger, and Anakin shot back, a bit angrier than intended, saying they would have thought he was crazy, never let him stay with the Jedi Order, and after all, they thought Qui-Gon was crazy for saying that the Sith returned. They doubted him, and it led for him to be slain just days later. Yoda nodded slowly, as he did sometimes blame himself for the death of Qui-Gon, and he said that it is time the council moves on Palpatine. They had some plans to already, to remove his emergency powers, but now they knew the longer they wait, the more time he has to enact his plans. All council members were ordered to return to Coruscant, and Anakin was asked to go to a senator that he trusts. Tell them what is happening. The Senate must be ready. And so, while the council members worked on returning to Coruscant, Anakin traveled to Padme's apartment, telling her about everything that was going on. Padme was in disbelief that Palpatine could have so much control, but ultimately, she had to believe it. Her and a group of senators recently created a group called the Delegation of 2000 to ask Palpatine to give up his emergency powers and end this war. It was no wonder Palpatine was shutting down all attempts from this group to find peace. She told Anakin that the Senate would be ready. Many members do not love the Jedi right now, but learning that Palpatine is working with the Separatists should unite everyone. After Anakin and Padme secretly spoke with other senators, Anakin was called back to the temple, where the entire council was waiting. They were boarding a transport to go arrest Palpatine, but as Anakin was getting on, he was stopped by Yoda, Windu, and Kenobi. With a conflicted look, the three Jedi told Anakin he would not be coming along. They said that there was a reason Palpatine began unraveling his secrets to Anakin. It's because Palpatine trusts Anakin, and so the council would throw him off by showing up without Anakin. This frustrated him greatly, and as he watched the entire council take off, he thought about all of his dreams throughout the years. The ones about Plagueis and his mother came true. What was to prevent the ones about Padme from coming true? Anakin stood in the hangar for a long time, before realizing there was no way he would be waiting here alone. He would have to go, and he would have to make a huge choice. Inside of his office, Palpatine felt into the Force. He could feel a ship approaching, and he could feel hints of fear in many of the Jedi Masters that were approaching. They were coming to arrest or kill him, and Palpatine smiled to himself. He was ready. The Jedi Masters would die, Order 66 would be executed, and Anakin would either join him or die. And soon enough, every single member of the Jedi Council entered Palpatine's office and spread throughout the room. Palpatine tried to play dumb, greeting every single Jedi by name, asking what the meaning of all of this was. And at once, 11 lightsabers ignited as Windu told Palpatine he was under arrest. And outside of the office, Anakin now flew his Jedi starfighter through the air as he looked into the window to see all 11 lightsabers ignite at once. Anakin prepared to speed up and get to the office as fast as he could when he saw something out of the corner of his eye. Flying up the side of the building towards Palpatine's office were 3 Vulture droid fighters and a Separatist transport. And Anakin saw the Vulture droids arm their cannons to missiles. Anakin understood now. Palpatine sensed the Jedi coming, and he'd prepared himself an escape. He was going to fly out of the window, take the Vulture droids. They would catch the Jedi off guard, blowing them up completely. Anakin tried to contact Kenobi, Windu, anyone, but it was no use. He would have to do this himself. And inside of the office, Palpatine was delaying just a moment longer. A small light on his desk indicated that the fighters were in position, and so with a smile, he unleashed a huge force push through the room, causing the Jedi to look away as the Sith Lord flipped out of the window, going to land on his transport. In just mere moments, the entire council would be blown up. But as Palpatine was about to land on the transport, it was completely blown up. Palpatine did not land on anything. Instead, he was hit by the explosion hard, and fell to the ground below. The last thing he saw was Anakin's yellow Jedi starfighter fly through the air, destroying the 3 Vulture droids, freeing the Jedi, and ending him. Anakin would go on to meet the Jedi inside of the office now, and he told them what he saw from inside. Per usual, Windu said that this was the will of the Force for Anakin to be left at the temple, so that he was in position to make this move. If he came with, they all could have died. And over time, the Senate would learn the truth about Palpatine from the group of senators called the Delegation of 2000, along with the Jedi Council. Through extensive searching, they found a small Separatist hideout that belonged to Palpatine by tracing the flight path of the Vulture droids, and the proof became clear. Grievous would be hunted down by the entire council and then destroyed, while the Separatist leaders had to surrender without Palpatine guiding them. The war would come to a swift end, and ultimately provide clarity for the Republic and Jedi. Corruption ran to the top, and they could see how the Separatists were able to rise to power. So thanks to Palpatine, both the Jedi and Republic adjusted, making drastic changes to rid themselves of corruption, and the Jedi would begin to step away from the Republic. Padme Amidala was nominated for Chancellor, but she declined, and instead Mon Mothma was elected, as Padme gave a safe birth to twins. Anakin became a Jedi Master, and spent a long time in the restricted section, but finding nothing. But with the death of Palpatine and the Sith, Anakin realized just how dangerous he was to himself and others if he tried to control everything. It was clear Palpatine wanted him, and Anakin hated the idea of becoming a Sith. So he meditated, found peace in allowing the will of the Force to take place. When Padme would survive childbirth, Anakin knew in that moment he was right to embrace the light. And folks, that is our story for today. A concept I really kind of thought of a while ago, and a concept I wasn't sure of how to approach. Because, obviously, no one had ever heard of Plagueis besides really Palpatine and, his master. But I thought, hey, what if, because there was, in the Plagueis novel, Plagueis had heard of Anakin and wanted to go meet him, and unfortunately couldn't, ever meet Anakin because he died from Palpatine's hand. So I wanted to do something instead where Plagueis does kind of find a way to connect with Anakin, and 9-year-old Anakin's first experience with the Force is actually seeing this vision, this moment where Plagueis connects with him and then dies, and then throughout his life as a Jedi, Anakin knows of the name Plagueis. So that's what I wanted to do today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.